Hey, it's me, Big P, with the first of what's sure to be many Path of Exile 2 videos. If you're anything like me, you're in the throes of PoE 2 hype madness, just staring at the edge of a, giant, somewhat familiar precipice. Hype doesn't begin to explain it, really. It's kind of an unprecedented feeling for me. Because I'm going to make a lot of content for this game, and I'm already seeing sort of, discourse and ideas about, how to approach the game. So I thought I would do a quick video kind of going over a couple things that both new and returning players, like lifetime PoE 1 players can probably get some good value out of. Just 3 quick tips that I think, will help your approach and methodology, going into a new ARPG like this. Of course, none of this is definitive. It's more just, esoteric nonsense about how to have the most fun out of the game and, just really the mindset to approach a game like this if you're not familiar with it, or even if you are and have a bunch of expectations going from PoE 1 into it, you should probably temper them because it does already seem like a very different game. I'm just going to have some basic gameplay video in the background. And the first of my 3 tips is to pace yourself. I mean that, literally immediately in the moment-to-moment gameplay, but also just generally, there's not enough time in the world. Even if you could multi-box accounts, you're not going to be able to play more than one build at a time, and it definitely seems like the sort of game, as PoE 1 is, as really any good ARPG one is, that that you need to, take the time to craft the character and, give it a try. You can, there's nothing against, respecing. You shouldn't feel pressured. There's no league cycle. There's no day one economy. I mean, there is an economy that you technically will be participating in, but I mean, it's not going to be important to the point where it's like, all right, if you don't play after the first weekend and if you're not in monoliths maps, whatever the hell they're called, by the first weekend, just give up. You need to pace yourself and make sure that, there's no content release cycle. We're used to like a seasonal content release cycle as PoE 1 players. But there's, not only is there no league mechanic or anything like that, like this is just the new game, which will be plenty of content for half a year, I would say minimum. They're probably going to do releases be before that half a year mark, where you will have scratched the surface of a game like this. Even with, consuming all the streamers' content and things like that, it's still going to be, fact of the matter that, no one knows anything definitively. Everything in the game is subject to change at an early point like this. And most importantly, new patches might bring a new character or two, like every couple of months. Like that would be the, incentive to return. We also don't know if they're like doing wipes every quarter like they usually do in PoE 1. Again, it's so all the more reason to pace yourself. Of course, this could all, age like milk. They're going to be like, 2-month cycles and recess and things like that. Then you do have to kind of light a fire under your own ass to keep up with all the craziness that's going to be surely happening in this lovely, lovely game. But, speaking of craziness, that brings me to point number 2, which is don't try and reinvent the wheel. I know Path of Exile 1, a lot of the best and most satisfying builds are really built off, Rube Goldberg-esque reactions. And although PoE 2 definitely does have support like this in terms of, cast on a lot of different triggers, there's a lot of different trigger meta gems and things like that you can get a sort of build kind of like a PoE 1 build going. It does seem like the support is more baked into each class, the identity is baked into each class, and while you definitely have the ability to stretch out into other classes and try other stuff that's like off meta, off brand for this class, I do feel like there is going to be kind of a more consistent and homogeneous build to create within your own class's skills. And maybe, don't try to reach over just to be, a unique build. I'm certainly not going to do it. I'm going to actually start as a mercenary and just, do a bunch of grenade stuff and just see how that goes, just to experiment and see for myself. So if you are interested in that, I am going to do the briefest and most, full of conjecture build. I can't even call it a guide yet. It's really just going to be more of a build plan sometime next week when we have more information. But I mean, really, it's going to be like as usual, daily updates over the first week, several weeks. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to put the game together, and I don't want to discourage experimentation, but just try not to make the most unique snowflake build right off the bat. You're probably going to have a bad time, just because it does seem like this game is going to be a lot more punishing than Path of Exile 1, which was already a pretty punishing game if you weren't really familiar with what you're doing. So, of course, experimentation is great, but you need to take it with a grain of salt. You do need to take the freedom. There's a lot of choices to be made, and I think it's best to kind of stick to the more directly obvious choices for the time being. Of course, you get a unique drop that puts you in a different direction. You might even want to completely re-roll for it. Go ahead and do that. And that actually brings me to my third point, which is experiment in-game, since secondary sources are not yet established. PoE2 seems to have a really awesome system of in-game tutorials that the first game severely lacked, in terms of, just like, okay, I don't know if there's any good examples here, but basically anything. I mean, I'm looking at a console gameplay, so you can't really mouse over it. I don't know how that's going to work on console, but any term that you're not familiar with, you should be able to mouse over it and, take a look and see what it specifically does. Instead of going to like the wiki. Of course, I'm sure, Path of Exile has a ravenous community, a rabid community in terms of, developing secondary sources, third-party software to help you kind of build stuff together. But none of that is going to exist on launch day. Maybe you'll have some, like, the skeleton of something like the first weekend that'll be usable, unless like they give, like never sync the early filters. I mean, I'm sure filters will be the quickest one. But as far as like, plugging a character into Path of Building or trying to get something set up, in terms of high level crafting, there's probably going to be a lot that's up in the air early on. So I would say, take a look inside the game itself and try it out for yourself in terms of, okay, what would be better? For example, they're comparing different, support gems here. It's like, well, what are you going to try? Just try it yourself. You can actually see in-game tooltip DPS, which is probably slightly better than the original one, which you usually never go by. But when you're in Act 1, Act 2, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It should be more of a priority to experiment in game. Oh no, where's my mute button? I'm gonna sneeze. I forgot what my mute is. Whatever. So really the point is, don't go alt-tabbing out at, as soon as an item drops and you don't know what it does, and you gotta watch a 20-minute video to see if it's worth equipping. I think a lot of times in Path of Exile 2, it's just going to be trial by fire. That's going to be the most effective way, or just the most fun way, really. You never get another first try, so try and enjoy it, and experiment with whatever your class is doing, and try to have fun with this brutally difficult game. My personal thoughts, I kind of wanted to do a Yap video to kind of sequester all the hype and personal thoughts I have about the game, because it definitely looks like they've been playing Elden Ring and other Dark Souls games for the past decade or so that they've been developing this. I don't just want to blame it on the dodge roll, but that's definitely a huge part of it. As well as boss design and bosses just generally being a bigger part of the whole experience. I think PoE has always had really strong boss design, so I'm both excited and horrified as to what we're going to run into come, is it really next week? Is it next Friday? We're like just over a week away from it, which again just feels surreal. Hasn't really sunk in, so let me know if you have any tips that you would like to recommend to people. Like especially if you're a PoE 1 player, because we're gonna have a lot of new players coming into what is probably just a more robust and difficult version of the game that we love, so you should know how difficult that's going to be for some people to get into. Definitely not gonna be everybody's cup of tea. You're gonna see some hot takes. Again, the biggest tip, here's a bonus tip: stay off shit like Reddit and YouTube comments and whatever, and just get in the game and keep playing. Whatever they tell you is secondary to what you're experiencing yourself. There's no replacement for it. And yeah, I hope to make a bunch more content. Again, we're not going to be doing like definitive build guides for a long time. My channel's never been about stuff like that. It's really been more about a more approachable sort of snapshot diary style content making, and I'm going to do mercenary. So if you're looking for Grenader stuff, stay tuned to the channel. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next one.